Good morning. Hope you're having a good bank holiday weekend and welcome to ChoralCast. Over the past 2 months, members of St Martin's Voices and our choral scholars have been introducing music from our archive, as well as some new recordings made remotely over the past few weeks. To mark our 50th ChoralCast and the end of the current series, we thought we'd put them together for you in one place. If you enjoy what you see, please do consider donating to our St Martin in the Fields emergency appeal, which helps to support our work through this difficult period. You'll find details of how to donate on our social media pages. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy the next 4 hours of ChoralCast.
Hello, I'm Gabriella. I sing soprano with St Martin's Voices, and I have been singing with St Martin's Voices since April 2018 when I joined as part of the fellowship scheme, which is a scheme for young singers at the start of their careers, and I've been singing with them ever since. I'm coming at you from my living room in southwest London, and I'm really missing St Martin's and all the work I do there, because as well as singing, I am the choral conducting fellow and I work with the Choral Scholars and St Martin's Chorus, so I can't wait to get back to that packed schedule. But in the meantime, today you're going to hear an arrangement of the spiritual song Ain'a That Good News by William Dawson. Dawson was a composer, director and musicologist born in Alabama in 1899. And although spiritual songs like this one you're going to hear are probably the most well-known of his works and widely performed, he wrote prolifically, including a symphony which was really well received upon its premiere by the Philadelphia Orchestra, and is definitely worth checking out because it perhaps hasn't entered the American symphonic canon in the way that it should have. And it includes all this spiritual material from the spiritual songs. But the piece you're going to hear today is all about joyful hope in God in the face of restricted freedoms and suffering. It's a really amazingly joyful piece, and Dawson was famed for his meticulous training of choirs and extracting rich sonorities and textures, and you can really hear that in this piece. When it starts, you have the soprano who offers the melody, and then the altos and tenors and basses respond in a sort of call and response style, but then they hold their notes. So Dawson uses the call and response to initiate melody and accompaniment texture. But then when we all come together and sing the same rhythm at the same time, the score is littered with accents and dynamics and tenuto markings to really instruct the singers as to how to inflect the text. So for example, when it says, "Take it home unto my Jesus," take has this accent and then Jesus has this tenuto. So it kind of encourages you to sing it like, "Take it home unto my Jesus," and really enjoy the word Jesus, which is so much fun. And that's why we love singing this music, because it's so detailed, it's so well composed that it really helps you access the words and sing them with a relish, which is great. So I hope it cheers you all in your day. I got a crown in my kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news? I got a crown in my kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news? I'm gonna lay down this world, gonna shoulder up on my cross, gonna take it home to my Jesus. Ain't that good news? Good news. I got a Savior in that kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news? I got a Savior in that kingdom, ain't that good news? Ain't that good news? I'm gonna lay down this world, gonna shoulder up on my cross, gonna take it home to my Jesus. Ain't that good news? Good news, good news, good news, my Lord. Ain't that good news? Good news, my Lord. Ain't that good news?
Hello, this is Chris from the St Martin's Voices, coming to you from the very sunny Essex Riviera. I'm a tenor and I've been singing with the Voices since about 2016, and in the same year I was also a choral scholar at St Martin's. I've been very fortunate to be involved with lots of fantastic projects with St. Martin's, including a fantastic tour that we did last year to the US, where we performed at the Chapel of Duke University in North Carolina, and we also performed in Little Rock in Arkansas. The piece I've chosen today is the gorgeous Crossing the Bar by Herbert Parry. So Herbert Parry was born in 1848, and as a young man he was forced by his father to enter into the insurance business. When that didn't work out, he was picked up by George Grove to be a contributor to the Grove Musical Dictionary. He went on to become a professor of composition at the Royal College of Music in London, and also a professor at Oxford University as well. These days, Parry is most commonly associated with the far more anthemic works, things like I Was Glad or the rousing hymn at Jerusalem. What's wonderful for me about Crossing the Bar is that it offers such a stark contrast to these works. It's much more intimate, both musically and emotionally, in terms of the setting of the text, and to me that it comes across as being more heartfelt. Crossing the Bar is a setting of a poem by the great Lord Alfred Tennyson. It's often been suggested that the inspiration for this text came from an illness that Tennyson suffered during a crossing over to the Isle of Wight. What Parry does really wonderfully is in this setting is the simplicity of the musical texture. Because it's essentially written in entirely in homophony, it really allows the text to come through. The poem itself is an extended metaphor comparing death to the crossing of the bar, or in other words, the crossing over of a boat from over the shoal from the safe harbour into the boundless deep of the sea beyond. Tennyson seems content to be saying goodbye, as he says in the line, "And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark." This is because the pilot that Tennyson so desperately wishes to meet is seemingly Christ himself. He has utter faith that he's being guided through the bar, and that when he reaches his destination, he'll finally be able to see his pilot face to face.
To Hey, this is Sophie. I'm an alto with St Martin's Voices, and I'm coming to you from my study on my new desk, which I made yesterday with my husband, so yay! I've been singing with St Martin's since September 2016. I did the choral scholarship and then I went on to do the fellowship, and I've been singing with the Voices ever since. I'm really missing singing at St Martin's. I really miss singing in an ensemble, and it's for St Martin's. It's more about friends. It's not just colleagues. It's about not being able to hang out with your friends. But we had a Zoom call last week for our normal GSM time, and that was it was an experience. I definitely am enjoying using Zoom. So the piece that you're going to hear today is Amazing Grace, which is arranged by Will Todd. What a great bloke. We've worked with Will Todd on many events. Recently we recorded his Passion Music, which was released in 2019, which features a gospel soloist and a jazz band, and of course us. So check that out in your spare time. Will Todd kind of combines like jazz and blues with traditional choral music. He often gives it kind of a fresh take on things, hymns and things like that. He has a stellar collection of the same stuff for Christmas hymns and tunes if you're interested in looking ahead to Christmas time. He's probably best known for his Mass in Blue. But I also really enjoyed listening the other day to my Bach choir buddies, who have just released a virtual choir thing on Twitter, which is his new album, which, let me get this right, is Light, Stories, Noise, Dreams, Love and Noodles. So yeah, go and have a look at that. That's pretty awesome. Amazing Grace is probably one of the greatest known hymns and spirituals, which is what you're going to get today. It's originally published in 1779, not by Will, funnily enough, and the text was written by John Newton in 1772. So the arrangement fuses the jazz style and the blues style with the choral, and what I really like about this arrangement is that there really is something for all voice parts. Choral singers are often like, I really want to sing the bass part there, or I really want to sing the soprano part there. But what's really great in this piece is that everybody's got a kind of chance to shine. The sopranos have this really great descant bit at the end, and as an alto, I'm really pleased that there's lots of suspensions and a lot of descending movements, so I'm not left on the same note all the time. Not that all music's like that. I'll just put that out there for all alto kind. Yeah, give it a listen, and also go off and listen to some of Will's other great pieces. So yeah, over and out.
Hello, my name is Hilary, and I am a soprano in St Martin's Voices. I first started singing at St Martin in the Fields as a choral scholar in 2015-16, and I then went on to become a fellow in 2017, and since then have sung with the Voices for various concerts and events. I am speaking to you from my home in Surbiton and wish you all the best wherever this reaches you. I'm missing singing with my St Martin's pals and hope to get back to it before too long. I am here to introduce I Was Glad, the choral anthem, a setting by Sir Hubert Parry, which he composed for the coronation of King Edward VII in 1902. He then revised this piece for the coronation of King George V in 1911, and it was then that he added the famous introduction that we all know and love. The text is taken from Psalm 122, and Parry uses verses 1, 2, 3, and 6 and 7. Since the piece is traditionally used at coronations, there is a section in the middle with the acclamation Vivat, long live the king or queen. But this section is usually omitted when the piece is used at other events. It starts with a rousing introduction for organ, and the choir bursts into life, first all together and then in double choir formation. There is a more intimate middle section, a prayer, and it requires the choir to scale back to a semi-chorus to achieve a more tender sound. But before you know it, you're raring to go again for the big finish. I, as a soprano, really enjoy singing the final ascending phrase up to the top B flat. And yeah, it's hard not to feel very uplifted after such a climactic ending. I doubt there's a choral singer out there who isn't filled with glee when they see this piece down on the menu. It's not surprising it's so popular. You may recognise it from the wedding of Prince Charles to Diana Spencer, and also that of Prince William and Kate Middleton. And my friend who got married in 2018, I was bridesmaid for her. She walked up the aisle to it and it was pretty epic. So yeah, I really hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, my name is Will Wright and I sing tenor with the St Martin's Voices. I have been singing with the group since September of last year and have hugely enjoyed being a member of the St Martin's family ever since. I am broadcasting to you from my flat in East London in the Olympic Park. All of the St Martin's team have been keeping in touch with each other through various virtual coffee meetings. A little podcast like this, and we really look forward to making music together, hopefully sometime soon. Anyway, today you are going to hear a personal favourite of mine. This is a setting of Gerald Finzi's My Spirit Sang All Day. He was an English composer who was born in 1901 and died when he was quite young. He died only in 1956. Finzi is best known for his vocal writing, but also did write some larger scale orchestral works, like his cello concerto, a clarinet concerto, or Dies Natalis, a song cycle for solo voice and string orchestra. Today's work, My Spirit Sang All Day, is the third song in Finzi's settings of 7 poems of Robert Bridges, composed throughout the 1930s but first published in 1939. This cycle is made up of 7 English part songs, all for unaccompanied choir. Finzi is arguably one of the finest setters of the English language. His scores are always littered with dynamic and expressive markings, all for the singers to better put across the text above all else. This piece is a really good example of that. A common phrase which is heard throughout this piece is "Oh my joy," which is the poet's search for joy, and it's only really revealed in the final line. This joy which runs through the piece is thought to be a nod to Finzi's wife, Joyce Black. As we know of Finzi's fantastic setting of the English language, as a singer it's a wonderful thing to sing, as it's a great opportunity for you to dig your teeth into the text and really challenge yourself while performing it. In the wise words of Marie Kondo, I hope this setting brings you joy to wherever you may be watching this from, and I hope you will enjoy this short uplifting setting of Finzi's My Spirit Sang All Day.
My spirit sang all day, oh my joy, nothing my tongue could stay, only my joy. My heart an echo called, oh my joy, and spake, terror I only thy thought, hide not thy joy. My night that came around, oh my joy, what beauty hast thou found, show us thy joy. My jealousies Christ, oh my joy, music and findeth the east, sent for joy. She also came and had, oh my joy, what, since she is this world, what is thy joy, is thy joy? And I reply, oh see, oh my joy, 'tis thee I cried, 'tis thee, that's my joy.
Hi everyone, my name's Maisie. I'm a soprano at St Martin's. I've been singing with St Martin's Voices since September 2018 when I first joined as a choral scholar. I finished that programme in June 2019 and now I sing with St Martin's Voices very often, so I'm really missing it at the moment. I'm hoping we can get back to normal soon. But hopefully in the meantime you can enjoy these choral casts. And the piece that I've chosen to talk about today is actually a congregational hymn tune by Kenneth Naylor called How Shall I Sing That Majesty. If you've ever been to Great Sacred Music at St Martin's on Thursday lunchtimes, you'll know that we normally have a couple of congregational hymns, so that's sort of where I'm imagining this happening. So Naylor was born in 1931 in Durham, and he went to school in Bath. He then went on to read music at Magdalen College, Cambridge. He clearly liked being in Cambridge, as he decided to stick around, and he was Director of Music and Housemaster at the Lees School in Cambridge from 1953 to 1980. He wrote a really wide variety of music, but he's kind of principally known for his hymn tunes, so he did a couple of arrangements of well-known ones for brass ensemble, but also wrote some new compositions like this one. This hymn tune is sometimes called Coe Fen. Coe Fen is a kind of open grassland near the Lees School in Cambridge, which Naylor would have been able to see from where he was working, which is how it got its name. So the text to this hymn is written by John Mason, and it kind of reflects how the singer and the worshipper can't describe on this earth the wonders that they'll experience in heaven. So the narrator prays, "Enlighten with faith's light my heart, inflame it with love's fire, then shall I sing and bear a part with that celestial choir." So the words are very uplifting, they're very hopeful, and full of wonder at the mystery of God and the kind of the scale and size of his power. I think my favourite lines are, "Thou art a sea without a shore, a sun without a sphere." The tune to this hymn is also a really popular tune. It's one of my favourites. I think most singers really enjoy singing it. Naylor set the text in triple time and in E-flat major, which is a really singable key for congregations. It's quite common in hymns, but also has a really enjoyable range for the choir. The tune has a really kind of beautiful lilting feel, but lots of momentum driving the tune forward, and space to reflect on the text between each line, so there's sort of short breaks. But Naylor really emphasises the last two lines of each verse with a whole bar of rest before the last two lines come in, with a driving organ accompaniment underneath, and that really drives us towards the climax. I think most singers' favourite moment would have to be the D flat in the tune at the beginning of the penultimate line, which has a sort of real yearning feel and drives towards the climax in the final line, where that descending phrase is repeated up a tone, so coming down from a high E flat down to bottom E flat where we finish. So hopefully you'll enjoy the recording that you're about to hear. I really love this hymn and hope we'll be back to singing at St Martin's soon.
Hello, my name is Daisy. I am a soprano with St Martin's Voices and have been singing with the Voices since 2015. I think my first concert with St Martin's was a Bach Magnificat, one of my all-time favourites. And since then, I have enjoyed numerous concerts, recordings, services, and of course, the famous GSM, Great Sacred Music. I am coming to you today from my living room in southeast London. I'm really missing seeing my St Martin's family every week, and I can't wait for us all to be reunited for a sing-song and perhaps a trip to the Chandos. The piece I am introducing to you today is Sing Joyfully, an anthem composed by William Byrd at the turn of the 16th century. Byrd was born in 1540. His early musical life took place at the Chapel Royal. Here, he was taught by people like Thomas Tallis and John Shepherd, so he was definitely in good hands. Byrd was a devout Catholic, living in a Protestant Elizabethan England. He practiced his faith in secret, and he also composed masses to be sung in services in the private houses of Catholic nobility. Sing Joyfully is thought to be one of the last anthems Byrd composed, and is certainly one of his most popular. It's definitely a St Martin's favourite. It uses text from Psalm 81 and is written for 6 voices, normally performed in the format of 2 sopranos, 2 altos, a tenor and a bass. This piece demonstrates Byrd's wonderful use of word painting. 2 of my very favourite sections are the fanfare-like bit, Blow the Trumpet in the New Moon, and also the wonderful string-like melody line of the pleasant harp and the viol. So listen out for those ones. This is a piece that I absolutely love singing due to its bouncy and playful nature. Before I pass you on to St Martin's Voices recording of this, I would like to leave you with a quote from Byrd. "Since singing is so good a thing, I wish all men would learn to sing." I hope you enjoy.
Sing joyful, sing joyful, Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of St Martin's Voices ChoralCast. My name is Ben Tomlin, and I'm one of the basses for St Martin's Voices. I've been singing with St Martin's for the last 4 years, and in that time it's really become a second home to me, so I'm very much looking forward to when we can all get back to singing together again soon. The Voices usually sing a lunchtime performance every Thursday called Great Sacred Music, in which we sing a selection of pieces on a specific theme, which is then interspersed with spoken explorations of their theme, including talking about the composers, the text, and the context in which the piece may have been written. Unfortunately, we've had to take our musical offerings online due to the quarantine, but for the time being, we're making do by taking it in turns to introduce a piece from our archives. The piece I've chosen today is a new song by Sir James MacMillan. MacMillan wrote this piece in 1997, and it was first performed in St Bride's Episcopal Church in Glasgow in March of '98. MacMillan is one of the best-known contemporary composers, and is perhaps best known for the Scottish influence he sows into all of his music, with intricate folk song-inspired ornamentations and chant-based melodies. The text for a new song is taken from verses 1, 2 and 13 of Psalm 96. It begins, "O sing unto the Lord," similar to a Zinget den Herm or a Cantate Domino, and it instructs all the people to make joyful noise to the Lord, the young and old, the rich and poor, the healthy and the infirm. With taverneresque drones and chants, this piece is a real MacMillan classic, and the organ shimmers behind the choir with rising scales ushering us towards the heavens. Then the organ bursts out from the texture after the final verse, to vibrate the roof with an unapologetic, declamatory major 9 chord, proclaiming the majesty of God. So this is St Martin's Voices, performing a new song by James MacMillan.
Hello, my name's Izzy, and I'm a soprano at St Martin's. I've been singing with St Martin's Voices since September 2018, when I joined the St Martin's family as a choral scholar. And also this year, I'm part of the St Martin's Fellowship Scheme, which is an octet of singers who do various projects throughout the year, both at St Martin's and further afield. Before the world sort of ground to a halt, we all went for a nice trip to Brussels and sang some nice services and concerts there, which was lovely. I'm really missing my St Martin's family during all this, and I hope we can get together soon and have a nice sing. Anyway, today I've chosen to introduce a piece called The Lord is My Shepherd by Herbert Howells, which is the second of the 6 movements which make up his Requiem. Howells was born in Lydney in Gloucestershire in 1892 and lived to the ripe old age of 90. In 1912, he moved to London to study at the Royal College of Music, where he was taught by the likes of Charles Villiers Stanford, Hubert Parry, and Charles Wood. Howells composed his Requiem in 1932 or 1933. People aren't exactly sure which year, because the piece wasn't published until 1980. However, tragically in 1935, Howells's son Michael died at the age of 9 after contracting polio, and although his Requiem wasn't written directly in response to his son's death, lots of musical material from the Requiem, including The Lord is My Shepherd, is quoted in Howells's Hymnus Paradisi, which was written as a memorial to his son. The Lord is My Shepherd is a simple and stark setting of Psalm 23, and begins with a lovely soprano solo voice in a speech-like style. A solo alto voice joins at the words, "He shall feed me in a green pasture," setting up a lovely comforting mood. And the melodies meander a little bit. However, Howells sets the text to the music very syllabically, which makes each word very clear. My favourite moment actually in this movement is when the whole choir come in together. And it's really beautiful actually because it's both unison and pianissimo, which is very challenging to sing, but very effective and very nice, lovely special moment. Instead of using the usual Requiem texts in his Requiem, Howells chooses to set psalms and antiphons, such as in this case Psalm 23. And he also sets Psalm 121, "I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills." And he also uses Salvator Mundi, "O Saviour of the world," which are all texts that speak of the comfort and strength that faith in God offers in troubled times. So hopefully this recording will give you a little bit of comfort until we can all be together at St Martin's again. So I hope you enjoy.
Before
Hello, my name is Freya and I sing soprano with St. Martin's Voices. I first joined St. Martin's as a choral scholar in 2017 and I then became part of St. Martin's Voices. Since then, I've sung in many concerts, services and events, and I was also delighted to play Mary in the Christmas Nativity performance, which I've now done for 2 years. I am doing my video from my music room in Chesham, Buckinghamshire, and I'm really missing singing at St. Martin's. There's a lovely social group there, so I can't wait to get back. But I'm really enjoying our weekly Zoom meetings, which we're doing instead of our usual Great Sacred Music rehearsals. Now, the piece I'm introducing is Were You There When They Crucified My Lord? Now, to give you a bit of information about this hymn, it is an African-American spiritual, first published in 1899, and it's also a very popular hymn. I'm sure you'll have heard it before, and it's also been recorded many times. One of those people who have recorded it is Johnny Cash. The hymn is about the crucifixion, which of course is very apt as we are now coming up to Holy Week. The structure of the hymn is call and response. The melody is simple and so it's very memorable and there's lots of repetition. Now for me, it really conjures up an image of these women mourning around the cross, and then when the men join, it gives a sense of togetherness and of hope. So what's really beautiful about both the words and the arrangement is that it gives this sense of sorrow but also of hope, which is of course so important. So have a listen, I hope you enjoy, and it's goodbye from me.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm a soprano and I have sung with St Martin's Voices since 2014 when I started as a choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields. I also worked for several wonderful years as part of the music office team at St Martin's. And at the moment, as a freelancer, I am based in Denmark. So welcome to my living room in Copenhagen. The piece I am sharing with you today is At the River by Victor C. Johnson. I have so many wonderful memories of singing this piece with St Martin's Voices, and most notably for a special service we held a few years ago commemorating VJ Day. And the Queen was in attendance at St Martin's, and the service was also broadcast live on BBC One television. The music is by Victor C. Johnson, a contemporary composer and conductor based in Texas. You'll hear that his setting is for choir with a beautiful piano accompaniment, where the piano ripples and flows and sparkles, really bringing to life the image of the river as we sing about it. The text for this piece is by Robert Lowry. Lowry was a 19th century American Baptist preacher and poet who is mostly remembered for his hymn writing. His two most enduring biggest hits are How Can I Keep From Singing? And this hymn text, Shall We Gather at the River, which he wrote in interesting circumstances. It was the summer of 1864, and Lowry was living in Brooklyn, New York. At the time, the city was experiencing a severe heat wave and a typhoid epidemic. So Lowry was trying to guide his congregation through a time of fear, uncertainty, and grief, which, of course, many of us around the world can relate to at the moment. Lowry's approach was to find solace in the book of Revelation, and he particularly took inspiration from the following verse in chapter 22. And he showed me a river of the water of life, bright as crystal. With this image as inspiration, Lowry wrote At the River as a hymn of comfort. It essentially asks the question, will we meet again? Shall we gather at the river? And answers with an emphatic and reassuring, yes. Yes, we'll meet again, we'll gather at the river, together with the saints in the beautiful kingdom of God. Later in his life, Lowry heard a rendition of this hymn, and he reflected, I felt when it was over that after all I had perhaps done some little good in the world. I really hope that this piece can bring some little good to your world today.
Hello and welcome to my living room here in wonderful Copenhagen. My name is Niels Greenhow and I have been singing tenor with St Martin's Voices since its formation in 2014, having been a choral scholar in 2013-14. I was also St Martin's Composition Fellow in 2017 and have been lucky enough to have many of my pieces performed and broadcast by this wonderful ensemble. St Martin's has been a huge part of my life for the past 7 years, but in January of this year I moved to Copenhagen to take up a job in the cathedral choir here, in addition to singing with professional choirs throughout Scandinavia. Before the COVID-19 situation, however, I was dropping by St Martin's on my return trips to London, singing in great sacred music concerts and thoroughly enjoying catching up with my friends at St Martin's. I really look forward to singing with St Martin's Voices again soon. The piece that we're bringing you today is a beautiful traditional African-American spiritual called There is a Balm in Gilead. Like many of the spirituals, it expresses a deep hope for consolation and comfort. Balms are ointments used to heal sores and reduce pain, and Gilead, a mountainous region in the territory of the tribe of Manasseh in Israel, was well known for plants and herbs that were used in producing healing balms. This song, in the lyrics, there is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul, assures the listener that there is true salvation and relief for those who are suffering. This setting by William Dawson provides lush and serene harmonies, emphasising the real peace that this song brings. William Dawson was a fascinating character, and if you want to learn more about him, I urge you to find ChoralCast number 1, where our fantastic soprano and current conducting fellow Gabriella will enlighten you. There is a Balm in Gilead was always one of my favourite pieces to sing at St Martin's, and I really hope you enjoy our recording.
To heal the sick,
Hi, my name is Nathan and I'm one of the basses of St. Martin's Voices. I've been singing with the choir since 2017 after completing a choral scholarship there in my early days as a freelance musician. I'm coming to you from my bedroom in Kennington, South London. And yeah, these are really, really extraordinary times, and it feels really strange not to be singing at St. Martin's at the moment, especially as it's a Thursday, because we usually have great sacred music today. So yeah, it's really, really odd. Although in hindsight, it's actually also created an opportunity to reflect, be still, take a moment from our usual hectic modern lives. It's definitely made me think about what I may be taking for granted in my life. Yeah, but all being said, I'm confident that we'll be back at St. Martin soon with the community I know and love. Yeah, so Ubi Caritas is a text which comes from Gregorian chant of the early Christian church. It's used as an antiphon of the early Latin office hymn in the liturgy of Maundy Thursday, and is associated with the ceremony of washing the feet. Although its origins were with the liturgy of Maundy Thursday, its general theme is that God is present wherever love and kindness is found, which actually makes it kind of suitable for any occasion, really. The translation reads, where charity and love are, God is there. Christ's love has gathered us into one. Let us rejoice and be pleased in him. Let us fear and let us love the living God. And we may love each other with a sincere heart. Norwegian composer Ole Hielo became enchanted with choral music when he was at music high school in Norway. It was compulsory for him to be in a choir, and the first piece he ever read through was Drufle's Ubi Caritas. It became one of Hielo's favourite choral works, and it's like completely understandable why he would later write his own setting to Ubi Caritas under the influence of Drufle's piece. Comparatively, Hielo uses the traditional chant as more of a general inspiration, whilst echoing the dynamic range and the form of Drufle's version. Personally, I absolutely love singing this piece. While it's simple, it's exquisite. The way the harmonies unfold is stunning, and the vocal lines are so beautiful to sing. We actually recorded this just before the lockdown, and it was just what I needed before this period of uncertainty happened. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the piece, and it brings you joyfulness and happiness while you stay at home.
Christian
Hi everyone, my name is Jess and I'm an alto with St Martin's Voices, and I'm coming to you from my living room in Kennington in South London. I've been a member of St Martin's Voices since February 2017. It's been a total pleasure to be part of the group for the last 3 years. My favourite project thus far has to be being a part of the premiere recording of Will Todd's Passion Music, which was released on CD last year. It was a real privilege to be performing alongside the likes of the incredible gospel soloist Shanika Simon, as well as Will and his ensemble. Do go and have a listen if you haven't already. St Martin's has become a real musical home for me and so many of us, and I'm missing my St Martin's family greatly, but I can't wait to be reunited with them soon to make some more music for you. In the meantime, it's a pleasure to be introducing the next piece for our ChoralCast series. Today's piece is the hymn O Sacred Head Sore Wounded by Johann Sebastian Bach. This chorale tune is most commonly known as the Passion Chorale, and today you'll be hearing just the first verse of the hymn. The hymn was originally based on the long medieval Latin text called Salve Mundi Salutare. The full poem addresses all parts of Christ's body hanging on the cross, but for the hymn they just focus purely on Christ's head. The words for the poem are originally in Latin, but these have been translated many times into both German and English, and the version you'll be hearing today is in English. It was first translated into English in 1752 by John Gambold, but the version you'll be hearing today is of the most recent translation, which was done in 1899 by Robert Bridges. And you can find this translation in many hymn books, including the Church of England's New English Hymnal, which is the one we're very used to singing from at St Martin's. The tune was originally written by Hans Leo Hassler in around 1600, and the use for the hymn was originally for a secular love song. But this tune was taken and rhythmically simplified originally for Paul Gerhardt's German version of the hymn, or Haupt voll Blut und Wunden. And this simplicity has been maintained throughout all of the hymn versions in order to make it simpler for congregations to sing along to. Now, the Bach enthusiasts among you will also know that this chorale tune has been used in many of his other works. Now, most commonly you can hear it in his St Matthew's Passion, of which you can hear it around about 4 or 5 times, set to different words. But you can also hear different forms of this chorale tune in 2 of his cantatas, 159 and 161, and also in his Christus Oratorio. You can hear many versions of this particular hymn in various hymn books, but I particularly love the version you're about to hear purely because Bach's clever harmonic writing is so integral into emphasising the importance of the text. Listen out particularly for the 5th and 6th lines of the hymn. What sorrow mars thy grandeur, can death thy bloom deflower? For these lines particularly, Bach uses lots of juicy suspensions and flowing passing notes to really emphasise those words. It's been a real pleasure to introduce this glorious music to you on this very special Good Friday. I'm very sad we all can't be together in this Holy Week to celebrate the mystery of the Holy Triduum together. But I really hope this music brings you some comfort in these strange times, and I can't wait to be with you all again soon. God bless.
O sacred head sore wounded, defiled and truth to scorn, O kingly head surrounded with mocking
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria and I'm one of the sopranos at St Martin's. I started singing at St Martin's as a choral scholar in 2016 during my first year out of university, and I've been singing with voices ever since. And I was also one of the sopranos in the fellowship octet a couple of years ago. It feels really strange to be relying on technology to keep music at St Martin's and everywhere alive, especially during Holy Week. So I really hope we can get together again soon to sing GSM for you all. And in the meantime, here is my choral cast for this Easter Saturday. I'm going to talk about our recording of Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem, which needs little introduction as I think one of the most recognisable movements from the Requiem, especially if you've seen the film Amadeus. Mozart wrote this Requiem right at the end of his life and actually died in 1791 before completing it. The most commonly accepted and performed version that we sing from in this recording was completed by one of Mozart's contemporaries, Franz Xaver Süssmayr, who added the Sanctus, Benedictus and Agnus Dei. The original manuscript only contained the first 8 bars of the Lacrimosa, and so the majority of this movement is also Süssmayr. So here are a few musical things to listen out for during this, which I think characterise the movement. Firstly, Mozart's introduction is very stark, and the strings, although it's the organ here, play these weeping, sighing quavers. Lacrimosa is actually Latin for weeping, so this is very important, and this motif is carried on in the accompaniment throughout the movement, while the choir sings in homophony, keeping the text nice and simple and humble. The opening text translates as, "Sorrowful shall be that day, when from the ashes shall arise the sinful man to be judged." So at the beginning, the soprano line continues the sense of weeping with Lacrimosa dies illa. And then listen out for this next ascending scale, an obvious example of word painting, which starts off with detached sobs that dramatically crescendos and expands to portray the fear of judgment time. Süssmayr then takes us to a much warmer sound as we go from the minor into the major for the next line, which means, "Thus spare them, dear God, O Holy Lord Jesus," before the opening theme then returns more dramatically for "Dona eis requiem," grant them rest. He's opted for a much more charged and desperate plea here, compared to how this text is usually set by other composers, which is often more peaceful. But I like this drama and air of finality in this one. So here is the Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to today's St Martin's Voices ChoralCast, and a very happy Easter Day to you. My name is Ellie. I've been involved with St Martin's since 2017 when I became a choral scholar, and since then I've been a part of St Martin's Voices, doing the services, the concerts, the trips around the UK for Heart Edge, and a personal highlight was our trip to America last February. You see me today in my living room. Obviously, we are all on lockdown this Easter Day, so I hope that this brings just something of the joy that you might usually experience at Easter, but just in a new way. I'm very grateful for St Martin's for all the things they are doing to connect us all at this strange time. So all the services that you see being posted and all of the music that is being posted, I hope that it is helping you feel connected to this community. Today's piece is This Joyful Easter Tide. It's a hymn by Charles Wood, first published in 1894, and this is an arrangement by Philip Ledger. The refrain goes like this: Had Christ that once was slain ne'er burst his 3-day prison, our faith had been in vain, but now hath Christ arisen. Happy Easter to you.
Hello, my name is Chris. I sing as a countertenor at the St Martin's Voices. I've been singing with them for about 2 years now, ever since I joined the fellowship scheme in 2018. Currently talking to you from Nocton, which is a village just outside Lincoln, Lincoln being where I grew up, and I was actually a chorister at the cathedral there. It is very sad not to be in London singing at St Martin's for the various services and concerts for you all to come and listen to. But it does mean I have the great pleasure of introducing today's piece, which is Ain'a Lux by Thomas Tallis. Thomas Tallis is a Renaissance composer known for many, many pieces such as If You Love Me, Lamentations of Jeremiah, Salvator Mundi, and of course Ain'a Lux. Tallis, like a lot of English composers of the time, wrote in 2 different styles depending on what the current king or queen preferred, whether they be Catholic or Protestant. The composer would have to adapt constantly between the two styles. One style would be in English, mostly homophonic, so that means, everyone singing in chords.
and the text therefore was very audible. The other style being in Latin, polyphonic, so that means lots of different voices singing at different times, coming in at different times, with very ornate writing, and much longer. This piece, Sonata Lux, is mostly homophonic. It's more solemn and prayerful, so the text is very audible. However, it is in Latin. This is probably due to the fact that the collection of pieces that this is from was designed to go around Europe and show off English music. The notes at the beginning of the piece form most of the piece compositionally, as nearly every phrase begins with the same pattern of notes. It's actually become a lot more famous now because a piece by James MacMillan called O Radiant Dawn directly quotes this piece and is often used as a companion piece. So I've seen lots of concerts where they open with Sonata Lux and immediately afterwards they sing A Radiant Dawn, so that the connection is really clear. This piece also contains what are called false relations, which are dissonances in the harmony. This is very typical for English Renaissance music, and we actually have what's called an English cadence, which is where there is an adjacent false relation in a cadence. The text comes from a 10th century hymn, which is an office hymn, so that would have been sung in Vespers and Compline Evensong, a text that everyone of the time would have known very well. The translation being, O light born of light, Jesus, Redeemer of the world, with loving kindness deign to receive suppliant praise and prayer. Thou who once deigned to be clothed in flesh for the sake of the lost, grant us to be members of thy blessed body. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy our rendition of Sonata Lux.
Hello again, I'm Gabriella Noble, one of the St Martin's Voices sopranos. The piece that you're going to hear today is an absolute classic and probably will be familiar to most choral music fans out there. Gabriel Fauré's Cantique de Jean Racine was written when the composer was only 19. It is a wonderfully elegant and tender setting of the French dramatist Racine's paraphrase of the Latin hymn Consors Paterni Luminis. The beautiful French text is set with such care and tenderness. After the basses begin with the melody, listen out for how each voice part enters mid-sentence, which creates a long and unified line. I hope this brings you some calm and peace today.
Hey everyone, I hope you're staying safe and well at home. My name is Sophie. You might have seen a previous video with me on, but I'm back, sorry guys, to introduce another favourite St Martin's Voices piece. This time it's Great Day, arranged by Moses Huggon. St Martin's Voices love singing a good Huggon arrangement. We do like cracking out a good Huggon piece. He was an American composer of the 20th century. He was best known for his choral arrangements of traditional spirituals. He arranged over 70 choral settings of spirituals, including quite a few well-known pieces such as Abide With Me, Every Time I Feel the Spirit, Mary Don't You Weep, Swing Low Sweet Chariot, that's just to name a few. So today we're going to hear Great Day, which is another traditional spiritual, and it's arranged for a soloist and SATB choir. It's a really uplifting and joyous piece. It's got this kind of driving choral accompaniment at the beginning with the syncopation and some accents. So basically we become the march that just keeps on going all the way through and keeps coming back. It's a gospel style lead soloist, and she gets, creative license to do glissandos and the freedom to move around anywhere and over the top of that repetitive melody that I've just been talking about. My favourite bit is the end, where you've got this kind of amazing climatic movement. The chorus drops down to pianissimo, and then it kind of gradually builds up, getting louder and louder, and the soloist is obviously over the top, getting higher and higher and higher, until there's this huge, big kind of B flat at the end. I mean, one day as an alto, I aspire to somehow hit that note, you never know. And then she does this great big slide down from the top B flat to finish off, and it's a great ending, okay? And stay tuned to listen for that. So I hope that you feel equally uplifted by this piece, and it fills you with as much joy as it does when we get to perform it to all our audiences and congregations at St Martin's. I guarantee this will be your earworm for the rest of the day, so enjoy.
Great day, the righteous marching, great day, the righteous marching, great day, great day, the righteous marching, great day. God's gonna build up Zion's wall, oh great day, the righteous marching, great day. God's gonna build up Zion's wall. Oh my Lord, God's gonna build up Zion's wall. God's hope in the chariot stops, God's gonna build up Zion's wall. This is near, my Lord, God's gonna build up Zion's wall. God's hope is my cross, God's gonna build up Zion's wall. Great day, the righteous marching, great day, the righteous marching, great day, the righteous marching, great day. God's gonna build up Zion's wall, oh great day, the righteous marching, great day. God's gonna build up Zion's wall, great day, that morning, great day, that morning, God's gonna build up Zion's wall, great day, great day. God's gonna build up, God's gonna build up, build up Zion, God's gonna build up Zion.
Hello again everyone, my name is Will Wright and this is my second of the ChoralCasts for St Martin in the Fields. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Herbert Howells's A Hymn for St Cecilia. This piece was first commissioned by the Worship Hall Company of Musicians to mark Howells's mastership of the company in 1959. The text he chose for this piece is by Ursula Vaughan-Williams, and as soon as you hear the opening line of the text and the first entry of the choir, you get swept along by this wonderful dance-like feel which Howells has set. The work was first heard at Evensong in St Paul's Cathedral on St Cecilia's Day in 1961, and the descant you hear in the third verse was added at the request of the cathedral organist. It's a brilliant example of heaven's long delight, the confident hope in the poem's final line. I hope you enjoy the setting of Herbert Howells's A Hymn for St Cecilia. See you soon.
See
Hi, I'm Hilary, and I sing soprano in St Martin's Voices. On today's ChoralCast, we're going to hear the voices sing Sir Hubert Parry's setting of the well-known hymn, Dear Lord and Father of Mankind. The text of the hymn comes from a poem, The Brewing of Soma, written by American Quaker poet John Greenleaf Whittier in 1872. Now, the poem is an interesting one. Whittier writes a sort of attack against the more ostentatious and outgoing forms of worship, and Soma was a particularly intoxicating drink brewed and consumed by those wishing to get closer to God and experience divinity. Now, rather than getting drunk, Whittier, as a Quaker, led a sober life and with stillness and silent reflection in his worship, perhaps so as to be able to hear the still small voice of calm, as seen in the last verse of the hymn. It was Garrett Horder who, in 1884, adapted Whittier's text into a hymn book. Now, the music of the hymn, Parry originally composed in 1888 as a contralto aria, long since in Egypt's plenteous land, for his oratorio Judith. And it wasn't until 1924 when the director of music at Repton School, George Gilbert Stocks, decided to pair Whittier's text with Parry's music, creating the hymn that we know and love to sing. And he did that so that they could add another hymn to their chapel services at school. And it's also why Repton is the name of the hymn tune. I think it's easy to see why the hymn is so popular. The melody carries the singer along as it builds higher and higher, and it's just so enjoyable to sing. No doubt you'll hear it at weddings and other events. And the hymn featured in the film Atonement, based on Ian McEwan's book. And there's a scene depicting the evacuation of Dunkirk, where a group of soldiers on the beach sing Dear Lord and Father of Mankind together, accompanied by Dario Marianelli's heart-wrenching soundtrack. And there's a very powerful and moving moment where the men create a calm togetherness and comfort, a sense of comfort amidst all the chaos happening around them, simply by singing a well-loved hymn together. And it certainly made the film very special. I really hope you enjoy listening to the hymn today. Why not sing along?
Hello again, my name's Izzy and I'm a soprano at St Martin's. and this is my second one of these video choral casts. But today I'm introducing a lovely setting of the Lord's Prayer in French by Maurice de Rufflet called Notre Père. This piece was commissioned by a priest from the church of Saint-Étienne-du-Mont in Paris, where de Rufflet was organist. And this is also why the piece is entirely homophonic, so that it could be suitable for congregational singing in church. De Rufflet dedicated Notre Père to his wife, Marie Madeleine, and it was also the last composition that he published, which makes this short, simple, reflective piece quite moving. Although it isn't based on any particular Gregorian chant, like lots of de Rufflet's other motets, it is chant-like in style. Each line of text is presented separately, which, coupled with de Rufflet's use of simple homophony, creates a lovely, comforting and prayerful mood. So I really hope you enjoy this setting of the Lord's Prayer by Maurice de Rufflet.
Hi everyone, my name is Jess. I'm an alto with St Martin's Voices, and it's a pleasure to be presenting my second video of our ChoralCast series. I'm particularly excited about this one because I really adore the piece you're about to hear. Today's piece is Moses Huggon's arrangement of I Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray. You may have heard from my alto buddy Sophie a few days ago to say that Moses Huggon really is a true favourite amongst us voices. We love singing his music, and this piece is no exception to that. You've already heard a bit about him from Sophie, but just to recap, he was a 20th century American composer, most famously known for his choral arrangements of traditional spirituals. He sadly died at the age of 45, but in that time he lived a very fruitful and musical life. He was from a very musical family. His dad was a bass in the local church choir, and the minister of music and organist there was his uncle. So as you can imagine, his family were very supportive of his musical talents. Similarly to a lot of his other arrangements, this piece has been written for a soprano soloist with a supporting SATB choir underneath. And while the choir is very repetitive in style, the soprano is given much more room to improvise and be free. Upon first hearing, it actually sounds like a very jolly and upbeat piece, but if you listen to the words, it's actually far from that. There is considerable evidence out there to suggest that these spirituals were actually used as a form of secret codes of communication. And Frederick Douglass, the 19th century social reformer and public speaker, confirmed this by saying these songs were ways of communication for plans of escape, expressing their dissatisfaction with their present condition and for revolt and protest. Now, if you listen closely to the text of the piece you're about to hear, there are lots of examples of this. For instance, the title of the piece, I Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray, which is then repeated several times throughout, suggests a sense of loneliness and the feeling that they were receiving no help from anybody to escape. A line that shortly follows, which is way down yonder by myself, could be translated as way down in slavery, having been separated from their loved ones. But the last verse in particular is the strongest giveaway to this musing, which goes as follows. Chilly waters in the Jordan, crossing over into Canaan. Hallelujah, troubles over, in the kingdom with my Jesus. The text in this last verse really reflects the idea of crossing over from slavery into freedom, ending with a hopeful expression of the freedom to live a better life and to serve God as they really wanted. Despite the rather upsetting matters in the text, as I said, the musical feeling of the piece is still very hopeful and joyful, and I can't help but think that this is a really true example of how important the act of music is in times of trouble and strife, and I'm sure we can all resonate with that, particularly in these uncertain times we are facing. So I really hope you enjoy our rendition of this piece, and stay safe, stay well, and God bless.
Lord, I couldn't hear nobody pray.
Hello, it's Chris here from the St Martin's Voices, and I'm very excited to be back today to introduce to you one of my favourite pieces, the beautiful I Love My Love by Gustav Holst. Holst was born in 1874 in Cheltenham into a musical family dynasty. He went on to study at the Royal College of Music and eventually settled as music master at St Paul's Girls' School in 1905 and director of music at Morley College in 1907, both positions he was to retain until the end of his life. Arguably, Holst's greatest influence on British musical history was his pivotal role in the English folk song revival. Together in collaboration with his friend Ray Vaughan Williams, he scoured the country to find folk songs to both preserve and to arrange. I Love My Love is a Cornish folk song which tells the story of two lovers torn apart when one is sent off to sea. Holst writes the piece predominantly using the Dorian mode, which gives it a sort of nostalgic feel. But what Holst does really brilliantly is that he tells the story itself through the arrangement. The piece begins very simply with the melody and the soprano line, but as the narrative perspective shifts, so too does the voicing of the melody. For example, in verse 4, the basses, who have been sidelined in the previous verse, make a dramatic return to mimic the triumphant return of the sailor himself from sea. The piece ends with the lovers reunited, and with these words of comfort to all those maids who wait for their lovers to return from sea. All pretty maids with patience wait, that have got loves at sea. I love my love, because I know my love loves me.
Hey everyone, I'm Nathan and it's great to be back for another ChoralCast. I'm sure you guys get the gist of these videos by now, so yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So the piece that I've chosen is by Maurice Duruflé. Now, for all of you who have absolutely no idea who Gerald is, he was born in France in 1902 and he became one of the greatest organists of the 20th century. Didn't actually write that much choral music, but the ones that he did, they were very popular indeed. So, for example, his Requiem or his beautiful setting of Ubi Caritas. He was described as a very private person, timid and reclusive, and he was said to have been a very meticulous composer as well. Basically, whenever he'd write a piece of music, he'd be chopping and changing it right until the second that he had to let go of it. I guess what sets him apart from his contemporaries, like Stravinsky and Shostakovich in Britain, is that he was kind of living in Paris during one of the most turbulent and creative periods for writing music. You would expect him to be writing some avant-garde piece of music, but it seems that he had no interest in that at all. I think he looked to the past, and he used Gregorian chant as a stimulant for his compositional ideas. It's perhaps testament to Gerald's long-lasting love of France's choral heritage. I don't think he was a fan of progressive music. I think he had a slightly more conservative outlook in life. Like, for example, in 1969, he heard a jazz mass in one of his chapels at Saint Etienne, and he expressed his outrage in a loud voice for what he considered to be a scandalous travesty. Nonetheless, his views absolutely do not hinder his wonderful music, and especially the piece you're going to hear today. Tu es Petrus is the third movement of a lovely set of 4 motets based on Gregorian chant. It employs the text of 3 antiphons from the second Vespers for the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. He dedicated the motets to Auguste Le Guénon, who was director of the Gregorian Institute in Paris at the time. All 4 motets are based on melodies from the Benedictine monastery in Solesmes, which was the institution that issued the most widely recognised editions of Gregorian chant at the time. This piece is so wonderful, and it definitely deserves to be recognised to a much wider audience. Gerald is able to transport your mind to another place and time. He adopts moments of brilliance that really stand out, and it sort of gives you a sort of ethereal, spiritual feeling as well. So I hope you enjoy the piece.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and welcome to another ChoralCast brought to you from sunny Copenhagen. I'm here in the garden of my apartment building, enjoying the bird song on the warmest day of the year so far, and I'm excited to introduce another Moses Huggon gem from our archives, his arrangement of the spiritual Certainly Lord. I'm absolutely loving being part of this ChoralCast series, staying connected with my St. Martin's Voices friends through exploring our favourite repertoire, but also through reliving the memories that come from our years of performing these pieces together. For me, Huggon's Certainly Lord takes me straight back to memories of a choral scholar tour to Berlin in 2015, when we sang this in the incredible acoustic of Berlin Cathedral. It was quite an experience. Moses Huggon's spiritual arrangements are hugely popular with choirs the world over. And there is, of course, the complex and sombre history of the oppression and slavery that these African-American spirituals were born from. Huggon's arrangements are an amazing tribute to that history. But a lot of the spirituals are incredibly joyful, and I think one of the reasons that they are so popular with choirs is that they are just so much fun for the singers. Often they start quite simply with a familiar melody and lots of repetition, but Huggon builds the harmonies and increases the rhythmic complexity. So the challenges that this brings and the interplay between the voices makes it infectiously joyful amongst the singers. This arrangement of Certainly Lord is no exception. It's based on quite a straightforward call and response format, with the soloist asking questions Have you got good religion? Have you been baptized? Do you love everybody? And the other singers replying in chorus, Certainly, Lord. With each verse, you'll hear it building and shifting between key changes towards an ecstatic finish, and surely a smile on everyone's face. Here's St. Martin's Voices singing Certainly, Lord.
Have you got good religion? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you got good religion? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you got good religion? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Have you got good religion? Yes, certainly, Lord. Have you got good religion? Yes, certainly, Lord. Have you got good religion? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Can't you feel the Spirit moving? Can't you feel the Spirit moving? Can't you feel the Spirit moving? You get weary. Certainly, 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 Lord. There's a better day coming. You get weary. There's a better day coming. You get weary. There's a better day coming. You get weary. Certainly, 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 Lord. Have you been converted? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you been converted? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you been converted? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Do you love everybody? Yes, certainly, Lord. Do you love everybody? Yes, certainly, Lord. Do you love everybody? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. I've got religion and I've been converted. Yes, I love everybody, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. I've got religion and I've been converted. Yes, I love everybody, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Have you been to the water? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you been to the water? Oh, certainly, Lord. Have you been to the water? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Have you been baptized? Yes, certainly, Lord. Have you been baptized? Yes, certainly, Lord. Have you been baptized? Certainly, Lord. Certainly, 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 Lord. Do you feel like shouting? Oh, yes. I feel a shouting coming. Yes, I'm feeling. Oh, yes. I feel a shouting coming. Do you feel like shouting? Oh, yes. I feel a shouting coming. Certainly, 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 Lord. Do you feel the Spirit? Oh, yes. I feel the Spirit moving 'cause I've been converted and I know I got religion. Yes, I feel the shouting coming 'cause I really feel the Spirit moving. Certainly, certainly,
Hello, my name is Nils Greenhow, and today for the St. Martin's ChoralCast series, I'm introducing one of my own compositions. This piece, entitled I Gaze Upon You, was written for my sister Lottie's wedding in August 2016. I knew the choir that day was to be made up of 40 fantastic singers, so I really had no restrictions on the piece during the compositional process. But first, I needed to choose a text. After a few unusual but glorious summer evenings reading romantic poetry in a pub on the banks of the River Thames in Fulham, I settled on a poem by the French poet Paul Éluard, Je te regarde et le soleil grandit, which translates to I gaze upon you and the sun grows large. Thankfully, there was already an extremely good translation by a chap called Gilbert Bowen, and I used this version because it remained so true to the original text, while still retaining the poetic beauty that Éluard had penned. And so, armed with a text and the promise of an excellent choir, I set to work composing, and it was to this day one of the easiest compositions I've ever produced, and by that I mean I never struggled for inspiration. I used B major, which is a key signature that has always reminded me of brightness and warmth, and throughout the piece I utilised some expansive chords with up to 10 different sounding pitches to give an all-encompassing feeling. My own compositional style has always drawn inspiration from close harmony singing, and this invariably leads to multiple suspensions where one note clashes against another, and you can hear this in some of the longer, more static chords. Something else I would recommend listening out for is my favourite bit in the piece, where the choir sings, "From the gates of day to the gates of dusk." I feel I found a really special colour on the word dusk, and the deep bass tones that follow this indicate the setting of the sun that was referenced in the opening line. The opportunity to record this piece with St Martin's Voices was amazing. I had such fond memories of conducting it at the wedding, and it was great to revisit and record it. St Martin's Voices sang it so beautifully, and my family and I are really grateful that we have it. It's a wonderful reminder of a great day for us, and I hope you enjoy it too.
Hello, I'm Freya. I'm delighted to be back to introduce another St Martin's Voices choral cast, today from my garden underneath the lovely apple tree blossom. I am very excited to introduce the very famous piece Panis Angelicus by Belgian composer César Franck. Panis Angelicus is Latin for Bread of Angels, and it was originally from the hymn Sacris Solemnis, written by Saint Thomas Aquinas. Then in 1872, Franck composed this piece for tenor solo, cello, harp and organ. Due to its popularity, it has since been arranged for not only choir, as you'll hear in a moment, but also for other voice types and in different keys. It's been recorded by many church choirs around the world and also by famous opera singers including Renee Fleming, Kiri Te Kanawe and also even Pavarotti, so go and check that out. As a soprano, I really enjoy singing this piece. It's got a wonderful lyrical and soaring vocal line. Each line builds in pitch until the cadence at the end of each phrase, bringing with it a sense of humble prayer and also the hope and comfort this brings. I hope you enjoy St. Martin's performance of this piece, and it's goodbye from me.
Hello and welcome to today's St. Martin's Voices ChoralCast. My name is Ellie and I am introducing Brahms' beautiful Ain'a Welt. Johannes Brahms was a 19th century German composer, conductor and pianist. He was born in Hamburg but spent most of his working life in Vienna. His reputation as a composer is he was one of the greats. He is often listed as one of the three Bs alongside Beethoven and Bach. His works for symphony orchestra, chamber ensembles, piano, organ, voice and chorus have become staples of the modern concert repertoire, with particular works such as his 2 serenades, his 4 symphonies, 2 piano concertos, and most well known to the singers, a German Requiem. Perhaps what is most appealing about Brahms' music is his adherence to a classical order. At a time where his contemporaries were trying new things and going in new directions, Brahms maintained a traditional and classical form and structure. Whilst looking back, he also was bold in his exploration of harmony and of rhythm. Ain'a Welt is a brief chorale-like work, and it belongs to a set of 3 motets written in 1889, and they were Brahms' last choral works. This anonymous text is an old German hymn, and the translation goes, "Ah, poor world, you deceive me. Yet, in fact, I confess it, and I cannot yet avoid you. You false world, you are not real. Your glint fades, I know it indeed, with woe and great suffering. Your honour and your goodness, you, poor world, fail in death and times of true need. Your treasure is vain, false money. Help me, Lord, to come to peace with this. I hope you enjoy.
Hello, Daisy here. I hope you're all keeping well. Today I'm introducing to you a piece by William Walton, Set Me as a Seal Upon Thine Heart. Walton was born in 1902 in Oldham, Greater Manchester, and he received his first musical lessons from his father, who was a singing teacher. His aptitude for composing choral music flourished during his time as a chorister at Christ Church, Oxford. He quickly established himself as one of England's most notable composers of the 20th century, composing not only choral music, but also film scores and chamber music. Set Me as a Seal Upon Thine Heart was composed in 1938 for the wedding of Ivor Guest and Lady Mabel Fox Strangeways. The text is taken from the Old Testament book, Song of Solomon, which follows the story of two lovers. Walton uses the tenor soloist as a cantor to whom the choir respond. The ongoing conversation between the soloist and choir culminates in a glorious but short soprano solo towards the end of the piece. I like to think that the tenor and soprano soloist are the two lovers, confessing their love for one another, with the choir underneath supporting them. The most moving aspect of this piece for me are the harmonic progressions. Walton takes you on a journey through the piece, using unfamiliar keys, to finally bring us back to what feels like home again, melting into a warm final chord of D major. Set Me as a Seal Upon Thine Heart is a particularly special piece to me, as it was performed at the wedding of two of my closest friends. I really hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy singing it.
Seal
Hello and welcome to today's ChoralCast. It's just over a month since we started. I'm Andrew Iris, Director of Music at St Martin's, and welcome to my dining table here in Wimbledon in southwest London, just overlooking the Common. Over the coming days, ChoralCast is going to take a slightly different direction, and I wanted to tell you a bit more about it. Today we've launched a new collaboration with the Church of England and the Royal School of Church Music and our Choral Scholars. We're really excited that our choral scholarship programme at St Martin's is continuing through the lockdown, remotely. And as part of this, the Choral Scholars are going to be recording some hymns and songs each week from their living rooms, which we're editing together, adding a little bit of stardust to make them sound as much like they were recorded in St Martin's as possible. And as well as using them for our own live stream services at St Martin's, we're offering them as a resource to churches throughout the UK and beyond, as a music resource for their own streamed services. Over the next few days, our choral scholars will be introducing some of these hymns to you in ChoralCast, and it's my turn today, starting with Great is Thy Faithfulness. The words are written by Thomas Chisholm, a native of Kentucky. Chisholm sent a number of his poems to the Reverend William Runyon, a musician with the Moody Bible Institute. Runyon wrote of this hymn, "This particular poem held such an appeal that I prayed most earnestly that my tune might carry over its message in a worthy way, and that subsequent history of its use indicates that God answered prayer." I hope you enjoy St Martin's Choral Scholars' performance from their own homes of Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Hello, my name's George and I'm one of the choral scholars at St Martin in the Fields. I sing bass in the group and I'm also a part of the St Martin's Voices Fellowship scheme for this year. I'm coming to you from the living room in my family home in Ipswich. Now, I'm really gutted not to have started our third and final term altogether as choral scholars. St Martin's is a really special place, and it certainly helped me settle into life in London when I moved last September. It's weird not being able to see everyone and sing with them most days. However, we've been beavering away, working behind the scenes to bring you some more music. Hey. The piece I'm introducing today for the first Choral Scholar ChoralCast is the triumphant and rousing hymn, All People That on Earth Do Dwell. It's a joyful song of praise and something that I think we all need right now. The text is attributed to William Keith and is a paraphrase of Psalm 100. Many composers have arranged settings of this tune, but the one we recorded is a grand coronation anthem by probably one of my favourite composers, Ralph Vaughan Williams. It was written for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in Westminster Abbey in 1953. Now, just a little bit about the piece for you. There's a great fanfare-like opening, and Vaughan Williams' harmonies add such colour and excitement to the melody. The final verse is the climax of the hymn, and it's sung at fortissimo with organ fanfare embellishments accompanying the choir. I hope you're all staying safe and well in these difficult times, and I hope this celebratory and joyful piece adds some brightness to your day.
Hello, my name is Bea and I sing soprano with the Choral Scholars at St Martin in the Fields. Today I'm coming to you from my kitchen in Camberwell, South London, to introduce the hymn How Sweet the Name of Jesus Sounds, which we have recorded this week for public use. This tune by Alexander Reinagel was first published in 1836 as a setting of Psalm 118, but is now better associated with this John Newton text. Born in London in 1725, Newton was not always a religious man and spent many years in the Navy, even captaining a slave ship, before converting to Christianity in the 1750s and eventually becoming an outspoken abolitionist. He was ordained in the Church of England in 1764 and has a huge legacy of hymns, including Amazing Grace. Newton said that this text was inspired by the Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 3, in its comparison of the healing and soothing powers of perfumes to these same powers in the name of Jesus. The text then confesses that although our worship of Christ may be inadequate here on earth, we will praise him as we should do when we meet him after death. The Psalter Hymnal Handbook states that this music needs to express the fervour of the text without any festive fanfares, and I hope you agree that it does.
How sweet the name of Jesus sounds in a believer's ear. It soothes his sorrows, heals his wounds, and drives away his fear. It makes the wounded spirit whole and calms the troubled breast. 'Tis manna to the hungry soul and to the weary rest. Weak is the effort of my heart, and cold my warmest thought. But when I see thee as thou art, I'll praise thee as I ought. Till then I would thy love proclaim with every fleeting breath, and may the music of thy name refresh my soul in death.
Hi, my name's Elsa and I'm a soprano choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields. I'm coming to you from the Olympic Park in Stratford, where I've been really enjoying going out for runs during the time that we're allowed to spend outside and just taking in as much nature as possible. I've been really missing the other choral scholars at the minute. It's really sad that we can't spend our last term together, but we've been cracking on with this project, which has been great fun. We've been catching up on Zoom and group chats and staying connected as we can at this time. I'm here to introduce to you the hymn We Have a Gospel to Proclaim. The text is by Edward Burns, and it's a really great piece. I loved recording it because it's just a really good one for singing out, and the text is really excellent. I'll just read to you the first verse. We have a gospel to proclaim, good news for all throughout the earth, the gospel of a Saviour's name, we sing his glory, tell his worth. It's also a great tune by William Gardner, and it's definitely one to sing along to if you can. Hope you're all staying well and staying safe, and see you soon.
We have a gospel to proclaim, good news for all throughout the earth, the gospel of the Saviour's name. We sing his glory, tell his love.
Hello, my name is Jack and I'm a tenor choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields. I'm really missing my choral scholar friends at the moment during this lockdown, and in particular I miss singing hymns with them. We sing about 5 hymns a week at both St Martin in the Fields and at St Stephen Walbrook, our other church. And I love singing hymns because it's nice to have the congregation join in. It really reminds me of why I'm there in the first place. So here is a hymn recorded by the choral scholars from their own homes, Ye Choirs of New Jerusalem. The text is very old. It was written by St Fulbert, who was Bishop of Chartres from the year 1006 to 1028. Please stay safe, stay at home, enjoy this hymn, and perhaps sing along if you'd like. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Charlotte and I am an alto choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields, coming to you today from my little flat in Chichester. Now, as many of my friends have said before me, I'm really missing everything about St Martin's, especially everyone there and all the things we get to do on a weekly basis. I think we're all really lucky to call ourselves part of the St Martin's family. Now, one thing that's making it slightly easier is the fact that we all get to catch up on Zoom every week, and also that we get to record some really lovely music for you all remotely here in our homes. So I'm here today to introduce one of those pieces for you. It's called I Give You a New Commandment, written by English composer Peter Aston in 1995. Aston takes biblical text from John chapter 13 verses 34 and 35 for this piece. And the text reads, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. If there is love among you, then all will know that you are my disciples. Now, something interesting about this piece is that it's the first one that us choral scholars recorded remotely that wasn't a hymn. And I think it was particularly rewarding when we got it back in its entirety. There's many reasons for this, but I think part of it is Aston's writing. When you hear it, you'll hear there's lots of unison and some simple melodies and 2-part harmony. And while this champions that beautiful text, it also gives a really lovely sense of unity between all of us choral scholars, which is particularly lovely considering we're all miles apart at the moment. That's all from me. Thank you for listening, and I really hope you enjoy the piece as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Hi, I'm Rachel and I'm a soprano choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields and also one of the St Martin's Voices Fellows this year. I'm speaking today from my flat in Cambridge where it's been very quiet, particularly because there are no students around this term. I'm missing all of my colleagues at St Martin's, but we've certainly found interesting ways of making virtual music together, which has kept us all very busy. Today's ChoralCast brings you a setting of Psalm 23. The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me lie in pastures green. He leads me by the still, still waters. His goodness restores my soul. Rather than the traditional Crimmin tune we're used to hearing at funerals, for example, today we hear an arrangement by the contemporary worship song composer Stuart Townend. Townend, whose popular songs such as In Christ Alone are sung in churches throughout the world, and he wrote the following to describe his inspiration for setting Psalm 23. The psalm is familiar to many as a psalm of comfort, for example in funeral services. But I also noticed that the psalm uses a lot of movement imagery, walking, leading, following, etc., that speaks to me of an active response of faith to what the psalm is saying. We are to live each day believing goodness and mercy are following us, that there are still waters and green pastures to be found. It's wonderful that such an ancient set of comforting words can find contemporary expression and offer people reassurance, especially in this time of lockdown when people might be feeling anxious or worried. The performance you are about to hear was recorded remotely as a duet by myself and Gabby Noble, who is one of the St Martin's Voices sopranos, and you might have seen her on previous choral casts. Listen to the words, I will trust, in the chorus, which is sung as a call and response between the two voices before they eventually come together in harmony. The chorus is, as Townend says, the active response of faith to what the psalm is saying, and I hope that in turn it brings you a sense of reassurance and comfort.
My shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me lie in pastures green. He leads me by the still, still waters. His goodness restores my soul, and I will trust.
Hi there, my name is Rob and I'm one of the tenor choral scholars at St Martin in the Fields, and I'm coming to you today from my parents' family home in a village outside of Salisbury. Today's ChoralCast falls on the 75th anniversary of VE Day, which offers us a chance to pay tribute to the service and sacrifice of the entire Second World War generation. Both my parents served in the military for the majority of their professional careers, and they have helped instill in me a deep appreciation for all those that serve their country. In recognition of this, we have chosen for today's ChoralCast the hymn Thy Hand, O God, Has Guided. The text is by Edward Plumptre, a prominent 19th century theologian and preacher who, amongst many achievements, became the Dean of Wells Cathedral in 1881. It affirms God's faithful hand of guidance and blessing on the church, a church that has continually proclaimed the gospel of the kingdom, and that, by God's power, will ultimately be victorious in its mission. Each stanza leads directly into the powerful refrain line adapted from the 4th chapter of Ephesians, there is one church, one faith, one Lord. This hymn and this day of commemoration offers us a chance to reflect upon all the sacrifices and determination of those servicemen and women from 75 years ago, as well as seeing the same selfless acts mirrored today by all the staff and volunteers within the NHS and other care organisations. I hope this hymn lifts your spirits today and helps us all remember that although times may be tough, there is a bright future to look forward to, and I personally cannot wait for the day that I can sing this and other hymns again in St Martin in the Fields and St Stephen Walbrooks with my fellow choral scholars and you, the congregation. So I hope you enjoy and look forward to seeing you soon.
Hello, I'm Lydia and I'm a choral scholar and voices fellow at St Martin's this year, and this is Buddy, and we're here to bring you the next ChoralCast. We're coming to you from our family home in Nottinghamshire, and we're very excited to share with you the hymn that we've recorded at home, Ye That Know the Lord is Gracious. The text is by Cyril Allington and was written in 1950. And the tune is by the Welsh composer Rowland Pritchard, written in 1830 when he was only 19 years old. It is one of the most loved Welsh tunes, and we really hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm one of the bass choral scholars at St Martin's Fields and also one of the current St Martin's Voices Fellows. I am bringing you this choral cast from my flat in Rochester, and the piece that I have the pleasure of introducing is the hymn Christ is Our Cornerstone. The text for this is from the 7th century and was translated from its original Latin by John Chandler. You will hear it sung to Samuel Sebastian Wesley's glorious tune Harewood, which was written in 1839. I find this hymn very uplifting, and it is a joy to be able to continue making music with all of my colleagues at St Martin's. I hope you will enjoy listening.
Hi, my name's Alice and I'm a soprano choral scholar at St Martin in the Fields. I'm coming to you for this choral cast from my bedroom. I'm at home in Oxford, which is where I am for the lockdown. It's a Monday afternoon right now, and in the alternate reality of normal life, I'd have spent a lovely day with my choral scholar friends. We'd have done a lunchtime concert, a rehearsal, had a nice lunch together. And we'd probably actually be singing the hymn and evensong right now, so quite a good time for me actually to be introducing a hymn for you guys, even if it's obviously a very different situation we find ourselves in. So the hymn that I'm introducing is To God Be the Glory. The words for this were written by Fanny Crosby, and the music was written by William Howard Doone. And both of them wrote absolutely tons of hymns because they were both involved in the American evangelical movement. This particular hymn became popular in England in the 1870s as part of a religious revival spearheaded by American evangelists. And I think you can kind of hear that in the music because it's got quite a kind of assertive march-like quality. So hopefully, a bit of context for you to listen with. I really enjoy singing this one because it has just a really, really great, nice chorus that you can really belt out. So even if you're not normally the singing along kind, maybe you can make an exception for something fun and, let your neighbours know that you're still there.
Praise
Hello, I'm Sophie. I'm one of the altos from St Martin's Voices, and I'm here to introduce John Rutter's Open Thou Mine Eyes. If you're into your choral music and your choral singing, then you most definitely will have heard of John Rutter. But he's not just a great composer, he was also musical director at Clare College, Cambridge, and he's also co-edited lots of various choral anthologies, such as the Carols for Choir books, and many from the Oxford Choral Classics series. When it comes to Rutter's pieces, I mean, where do I begin? There's so many great ones to listen to. Larger works-wise, there's The Gift of Life, and of course his Requiem, but also he does many smaller sacred choral pieces such as A Prayer of St. Patrick, The Lord Bless You and Keep You, and For the Beauty of the Earth. If you know Rutter's tunes quite well, you'll now be singing those in your head, like I am. And Open Thou Mine Eyes is also a really great Rutter piece. It's an a cappella anthem, and it was inspired by Celtic folk song. The words are from a 17th century text by Lancelot Andrews, and the words for the first verse are, "Open thou mine eyes, and I shall see. Incline my heart, and I shall desire. Order my steps, and I shall walk in the ways of thy commandments." It's written really beautifully, and it starts with the soprano singing on their own, and then it kind of gradually expands out into incorporating other voices in close harmony. So take a listen and enjoy.
Open thou mine eyes, and I shall see. Incline my heart, and I shall desire. Order my steps, and I shall walk in the ways of thy commandments. Open thou mine
Hello, it's Chris here from the St Martin's Voices. I'm here to introduce to you today a piece by Bernadette Farrell, "O God, You Search Me and You Know Me." Bernadette Farrell is a living British composer, which is very exciting as we don't often get to talk about living composers. She's perhaps best known for her hymn arrangements. She began her musical studies at King's College London and then went on to study at the Guildhall School of Music. This hymn, "O God, You Search Me and You Know Me," takes the text from Psalm 139, which is very appropriately entitled "For the Chief Musician." Psalm 139 explores the nature of our relationship to God and explains that God knows everything about us and has done so from the moment of our conception. My personal favourite moment of this piece is at the beginning of the fourth verse, when the accompaniment drops out, leaving just the singers unaccompanied, singing the following text. "Although your spirit is upon me, still I search for shelter from your light. There is nowhere on earth I can escape you, even the darkness is radiant in your sight." There's just something really beautiful about that, the construction of the harmony and the simplicity of it, which I really love. So here it is, the beautiful "O God, You Search Me and You Know Me."
O God, You search me and You know me. All my thoughts I open to Your gaze. When I walk or lie down, You are before me. Ever the maker and keeper of my days. You know my resting and my rising. You discern my purpose from afar. And with love everlasting You besiege me. In every moment of life or death You are. For You created me and shaped me. Gave me life within my mother's womb. For the wonder of who I am, I praise You. Safe in Your hands, all creation is made new.
Hello, it's Daisy again. I hope you're all keeping well. Today I'm introducing the hymn Angel Voices Ever Singing. Angel Voices is a really popular hymn in the Church of England and is often sung at music and dedication festivals. It was originally written for a service to celebrate the installation of a new pipe organ at St John the Evangelist Church in Wingate in Lancashire in 1861. The newly appointed vicar of this parish, Reverend William Mercury, asked his friend Reverend Francis Pott to write a hymn for the occasion. Reverend Francis Pott was ordained in 1856 and was influenced by the Oxford High Church movement. Though he wrote several original hymns, he was perhaps best remembered for his translations of ancient hymns into English, the most famous example being "The Strife is O'er, the Battle Won." He also served on the committee of Hymns Ancient and Modern, which was published in 1861. After completing the words to Angel Voices, he asked Dr. Edwin George Monk, the musical editor of Hymns Ancient and Modern, to compose a suitable tune. The result was a perfect match between harmony and poetry. The words are now almost exclusively sung to this tune. I really hope you enjoy our recording of this hymn and that we are all together in church singing it again soon.
Angel
Hello and welcome back to another ChoralCast. My name is Ben Tomlin and I'm coming to you from this living room in Salisbury. Today we'll be listening to Give Us the Wings of Faith by James Whitbourne. The text is by Isaac Watts, who is commonly referred to as the father of English hymnody and has over 750 hymns attributed to him, including such favourites as When I Survey the Wondrous Cross and O God Our Help in Ages Past. Watts was a pastor in London and showed early signs of genius, learning Latin at the age of 4 and Greek, French and Hebrew by the time he was just 13. His father, sick of Isaac complaining about the state of hymns in church, challenged him to write something better, to which Isaac responded by returning with his first hymn, Behold the Glories of the Lamb, just 1 week later. Whitbourne is an internationally renowned choral composer who studied at Magdalen College, Oxford. He sets the text initially in the soprano line, the tune somewhat reflective of the text's hymn origins, and underneath the tune he writes an expansive, descending sequence of angelic choral sounds in the lower parts. The choir comes together now to sing the text as the people ask the saints how they entered heaven, and the darker tonality of this middle section represents the more sombre tone that usually accompanies the story of the crucifixion. For the final section, the tune is augmented, being sung now at half speed, as the saints reach their promised rest. So this is Give Us the Wings of Faith by James Whitbourne.
Hello again, I'm Victoria and today we have Holy is the True Light by William Harris. Harris wrote this piece in around 1947 in memory of Evelyn Lee, wife of the precentor of Eton College, Henry Lee. At this time, Harris was living and working just up the road as organist at St George's Chapel, Windsor Castle, and was the piano teacher of the young princesses Elizabeth and Margaret. The text is comforting in the way it describes the unfading splendour of what's to come, and Harris illustrates this with its wonderful melismatic melodies that soar up to the heavens. The music gradually winds down to end with a simple and poignant Alleluia, creating an overall sense of peace and prayerfulness. Lending radiance to them that endured in the heat of the conflict was a line that particularly stood out to me when listening to this just now, as I couldn't help but think of everyone working at the front line in hospitals and care homes. So here is Holy is the True Light, and perhaps you can keep them in your thoughts as you listen.
Hello, welcome to today's ChoralCast. My name is Chris, and today's piece I'll be introducing is called Peace I Leave With You by Amy Beach. Amy Beach is an American composer from the late 1800s and early 1900s, and she has written many different works, whether it be symphonic, chamber, or choral. Her Gaelic symphony was premiered by the Boston Symphony Orchestra in 1896 and was the first symphony composed and published by an American woman. Beach wrote today's piece as part of her choral responses in 1891. It uses text from the book of John, chapter 14, verses 27. The text goes, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled." It's a short piece, but a very beautiful one, utilising rich harmony and expressive appoggiaturas. The soprano line has moments of very long sustained notes which allow for the expressive harmony underneath, and very expressive melodic lines, especially in the alto part. I hope you enjoy our rendition of the piece and have a moment of reflection in these confusing times. Thank you.
You
Hello from sunny Surbiton. I'm Hilary from St Martin's Voices, and I'm back to introduce a firm favourite at Great Sacred Music. Today we're going to hear the voices sing Wade in the Water, a spiritual arranged by Moses Huggon. Spirituals were a way of sharing Christian values through song, whilst also communicating the hardships of slavery. The text of Wade in the Water is associated with both the Old and the New Testament. The verses reflect on the Israelites escaping Egypt, as seen in Exodus chapter 14. And in the chorus, you'll hear a line, God's gonna trouble the water, repeated throughout the spiritual. And troubling the water refers to healing, as can be found in John chapter 5. The song opens on a unison descending phrase, getting the choir to sing right down in the bellies of their voices, which is always good fun. The choir then set a steady engine-like tempo as the soloist begins singing the melody over the top. The dynamics require the choir to surge back and forth so as to mimic the movement of water. Most Huggon arrangements feature a thrilling climactic ending, and Wade in the Water doesn't disappoint. The choir ceases its accompaniment and starts rising up, both in pitch and dynamic, before we reach some sustained chords, concluding in a big cry on the word God, featuring a top C in the soprano part. The final phrase ends with a crescendo, a suitable dramatic way to finish a great spiritual. I really hope you enjoy listening to it, and I hope it helps to keep your spirits up.
God's a gonna trouble Wade in the water, 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 children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that host all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like an Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, children, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. Well, it looked like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Children, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble water. Wade in, children, go and wade in the water. Children, wade.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and welcome to today's ChoralCast, exploring Moses Huggon's arrangement of I Stood on the River of Jordan. I'm here by Damhusen, a lake in the west suburbs of Copenhagen. This is a place I come to often for peace and connection to nature during these challenging times. I hope you can feel the sense of calm here as the sun rises behind me this morning. In today's piece, the focus is the River Jordan, which has a long history of cultural and spiritual significance. It was one of the major rivers nourishing the area known as the Fertile Crescent, or the cradle of civilization, located across modern geographies Israel, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. This arc-shaped band of lush, arable land allowed previously nomadic peoples to settle and farm in the agricultural revolution of 8,000 years ago. From this settlement came waves of technology, ideas, and of course the Abrahamic faiths. The Jordan River grew in spiritual significance in the landscape of the Bible. Genesis references this fertile period of settlement, describing the river plain as well-watered everywhere and like the garden of the Lord. It symbolizes an Eden on earth. Then in Exodus, the Jordan begins to symbolize freedom, because crossing the river was one of the final hurdles of the hazardous journey taken by Moses and the Israelites fleeing slavery in Egypt. Later, in the New Testament, the River Jordan becomes sanctified as a place of baptism for both John the Baptist and then Jesus. More recently, crossing the River Jordan has garnered a new layer of cultural significance in its use as a symbol of freedom both in African American spirituals and popular songs more generally. Ranging from the spirituals Deep River and Swing Low Sweet Chariot to the folk song Poor Wayfaring Stranger and the musical theatre classic Old Man River. The River Jordan represents the promised land, both in this life and the next. In today's spiritual arrangement, Huggon creates an atmosphere of contemplation and comfort. The poetry is simple. I stood on the river of Jordan to see that ship come sailing over. O mourner, don't you weep when you see that ship come sailing over. O sister, you better be ready. O brother, you better be ready. Shout glory, hallelujah, when you see that ship sail by. I find it interesting that Huggon creates calm, but not necessarily ease in this piece. He manages to imbue the music with a feeling of world weariness. The rhythm is never quite allowed to flow because the phrases are slow and flexible, and slowed further by long pauses and lethargic glissandi between chords. The melody may be smooth and simple, but the inner harmonies are grindingly chromatic. Even the phrase, shout glory, hallelujah, doesn't reach the ecstasy you might expect, but instead paints an internalized kind of joy and faith. You really hear that introspection towards the end, when the words are replaced by humming. I hope you enjoy Moses Huggon's arrangement of I Stood on the River of Jordan.
Well, we're nearly at the end of ChoralCast for today. I hope you've enjoyed the last 4 hours. In particular, I'd like to thank St Martin's Voices and our choral scholars for their contributions. All of us here at St Martin's really look forward to the time when we can sing together again in person. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please do consider donating to our St Martin in the Fields emergency appeal, which helps to support our work through this difficult period. You'll find details of how to donate on our social media pages. In the meantime, here is the 50th and final ChoralCast, and it's a very special one. It's introduced by our longtime friend and supporter, the composer Will Todd. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, I'm Will Todd, talking to you from my home in Guildford. I've had the great privilege of working with St Martin's Voices on a number of projects over the years, and it's great to be able to introduce the 50th choral cast. Now, I'm sitting in my little studio at the end of the garden. It's a place of refuge from the sometimes hectic family life here, especially with 3 teenagers who are currently missing their friends, of course. And this is where I compose, at my piano first, and then onto the computer. And this is where I composed the piece that you're going to hear. Were You There is the final section from a larger work that I wrote for St Martin in the Fields in 2018 called Passion Music. It's a work for choir and jazz ensemble, and it sets a variety of Easter-themed texts working through the main points of the Passion story. And I love working with the singers at St Martin's. I've had some really special times performing there in concerts, in worship and in broadcasts. And when we first performed this piece, we were joined by soul gospel singer Shanika Simons, who gave a stunning rendition of the solo part. And you're going to hear her on this Signum Classics recording alongside St Martin's Voices and the Will Todd Ensemble. When I wrote the original songs, I spent a lot of time with Shanika working on the gospel solo lines, and she brings an incredible life and authenticity to the sound, as you'll hear at the start of Were You There from Passion Music.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Sometimes it causes me to tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there? Sometimes